Huh?
It's rolling.
Oh.
See the camera, then the camera sees you as well. Okay, Joe, welcome to our set.
Good.
I wanted to make a film that was a film set in the United States. As you probably know, I have moved to the United States and I have been out for new horizons. And that means working with actors with whom I hadn't worked yet, and I always dreamt of working with them in new forms of distribution, new alliances with productions. The project was for a long time dormant. And I remember very well the producer, Eric Bassett, who had worked with David Lynch for quite some time. He wanted to do the film, and we met together in David Lynch's home, and we sat around the kitchen table, and I kept saying we should make films that cost not 10, 20, 30 million dollars. They should be contained, but at the same time, we should work with the best of actors, and we should have a great story. And I remember that David was totally enthusiastic, and he said, yes, that's what we should do, and we should all return to this essential filmmaking. Do you have a project? And I said, yes, I do have a project. When can you start? And I said, in principle, tomorrow. And Eric Bassett said, oh, no, we have to do pre-production, we have to find the actors. And so, in a way, I owe David and his kind of instantaneous enthusiasm somehow carried the day, and it pushed us all into doing this film.
Aquí me siento a cantar con cariño.
I had seen a film many years ago by Jules Dessin called Dream of Passion, and it's an absolutely riveting film where an actress playing Medea has an encounter with a woman who has enacted Medea's crimes in reality. So myth meets reality, they somehow converge in madness, and something rather remarkable comes of it. And I'd always been intrigued by that film, and even as a student of the classics, which I was at that time when I saw this film, it was the most powerful recreation of a Greek tragic myth in any modern media I'd ever seen. And so I always had in the back of my head this idea that if I ever came across a story where myth and reality intersected in a kind of fascinating or compelling way, that I would just seize on it. And I happened to be an invited speaker at a drama conference in Florida, and another one of the speakers was a forensic psychologist. And he was there talking about cases he had, unusual cases that had literary antecedents or crossovers. And he mentioned, just in passing, it wasn't the focus of his paper, just in passing, the case of a very gifted young actor, very unusual man, who was playing the role of Orestes in a production of the Oresteia, and who walked out of the world of the play and committed in reality the crime that he was to enact in the theater. He murdered his actual mother. And so I wanted to meet the man himself. This was pre-internet, this was the early 90s, so it wasn't so easy to find people. According to the records, he had been 8 years in maximum security facilities for the criminally insane, and then remanded to some kind of conditional release programs. Eventually he won his freedom, and he was now at large. So I hired a detective, and I found him, and I wrote him a letter. And in the letter I said very simply, I'm a professor of classics, and I'm a student of the Oresteia, and I have a particular interest in the myth of Orestes. And I want to talk to you because I'm interested in the myth and the poetry of your madness. And that really appealed to his vanity and his narcissism. And he wrote me back right away, and he said, come out and meet me. And that was the beginning of a relationship that spanned several years and that led to the writing of the screenplay and my hooking up with Werner to make this film.
Of course, there was an interest to meet the real murderer. Herb Golder, who had met him quite a few times and had spoken with him and had recorded conversations with him, told me about him, but I was not fully prepared at what I saw and whom I met.
I was out in Los Angeles conducting my last series of interviews with Mark Jaworski. I had initially interviewed him in the boarding house in which he lived in San Diego. And he had then moved to Riverside, California, and so I was in LA and I was going out to Riverside. Mark was living in a trailer park, and I figured I'd 3 or 4 more afternoons with Mark. I had a few more questions. I wanted to ask him about the sort of fateful production of the Oresteia and just to what extent that really was the catalyst for the matricide and a few other things. And Werner at the time was in LA, and he was involved in pre-production meetings for a film. And spending his days meeting with studio executives, going over budgets and plans. And we would get together at the end of the day and have a drink, have a beer or something like that. And so Werner would relate his day and I would relate mine. And it was probably the first and only time in my life I had better stories than Werner Herzog. Because I was spending my days sitting in a trailer park in Riverside talking about Greek myth with a madman. And he was meeting with studio executives. So Werner said to me, Herb, I want in. I want to meet the guy.
When I walked into the camping trailer of Mark Jaworski, the real murderer, the trailer itself was stuffed with the strangest memorabilia and written texts and biblical quotes. And the first thing that catches my eye, in one corner of the trailer, there's a photo of Aguirre, the Wrath of God, Klaus Kinski, with crazed expression on his face, and the whole corner was built a little bit like a shrine with a candle lit under it. And I immediately had the feeling, get out of here, this doesn't look right. There's something which doesn't feel right, and we should not really connect too much to the real man.
We spent maybe an hour or two with Jaworski, and we left, and on the way back to Los Angeles, Werner said, Herb, let's do the film together. And so without a moment's hesitation, I said, yes, of course. And we decided we would meet in about a month's time in Austria. We'd go to a remote location and we would write the screenplay. And so I remember I flew to Vienna. Werner picked me up at the airport. We drove to the country. We sat down in the living room, and Werner looked across at me and he said, Herb, you're not leaving until it's finished, and you're not staying longer than a week. Of course, the film is based on a true story. And I had compiled mountains and mountains of material. And in a way, the film is derived from all of that.
I had the feeling not only should we move away from the person of Mark Jaworski, we should also move away from all the details of his case.
There was a tremendous amount of invention. And this was something I discussed with Jaworski quite openly. I said, Mark, we're not really interested in making a documentary. What we're interested in is taking your material and then being free to run with it as we see fit, to follow our own star. And he never really had a problem with this because he was enough of an artist himself to understand that we had to be allowed that license, that we would have free reign with the material. And so we did. And it, in a way, the story, as I say, based on something that happened, but poetically reinvented and stylized. And yet, I think some of the most riveting moments in the film are moments that come directly out of the transcripts, either of my interviews with him, or the police documents, or the court records. Lines like when the director character played by Udo Kier relates how Mark told him at one time that he cried for 4 years in a laundry room until they renovated it to use it for something else. I mean, it's a line that absolutely stays with you, that you do not forget. This is something Jaworski said. He said it to me, and it was also in a transcript. When he was in the mental institution, he went to the laundry room and he would cry every day, and then someone was murdered in there, and so they closed it and renovated it to use it for something else.
You know, when we were up in Canada, I realized that Brad was crying a lot. He didn't like to talk about it, or else made a joke out of it. But I remember one time, he turned to me a little bit more serious and said, I cried in a laundry room for 4 years until they renovated it and used it for something else.
We used very detailed moments of the documentation. For example, totally strange as it may sound, in the first homicide detective reports, they are very meticulous. This cup number 3 is 5.5 inches away from the edge of the table, and it's northwest from the eastern wall of this room. So it's a very, very strange sort of localization of items on the scene of the crime. And we took some of it, and some of it, whole bundles of things we brushed aside, and we went again for some real essential moments.
First cup measures
94.
94 inches south of the north.
No, that's north.
Oh, west, correction, west of the east wall. Second cup measures
This was Mrs. McCallum.
72.
72 inches south of the north
This
wall.
was Mrs. McCallum's cup.
I see.
Yeah, she was sitting right there.
I see. I see.
Third cup is approximately 12 inches west of the second cup.
We'll talk a little later. It is noted that the coffee in all 3 cups is still lukewarm. Time, 7:45.
Other lines in the film, such as when Chloe Sevigny, the fiancé, says, and he said to me such a strange thing that, twitch your feet. I want to see my mother dancing, her feet dancing her to heaven. This was something that he actually thought as while his mother lay murdered in the house where he killed her, and he watched her feet twitch, and he thought that they were twitching and dancing her off to heaven. Any number of absolutely sort of remarkable moments or lines like that, in some sense, form the poetic core and the essential mystery of the story of Jaworski. But they're taken out of their original context. As I say, it's not an effort to document in any kind of clinical way his madness or his decompensation or his break with reality, but these strange insights that being so close to the edge afforded him.
He was obsessed with her. When I play his mother and laid murdered at his feet, he whispered to me, "Twitch your feet. I want to see my mother's feet dancing her to heaven."
Apple 1.
Mrs. McCallum, I have your pizza. Can you see my weapon? Can you see my weapon?
Many things were invented spontaneously while we were filming. Even while we were running a take at the end of dinner, the scene was over, and somehow, by intuition, I said to the actors, "Freeze, stand still, freeze, don't move." And the camera kept rolling, rolling, rolling. And it's not a technical freeze frame. They really stand still and do not move for quite a while. It had to do with a motive in the whole film about time that stands still, a pivot of where the whole universe all of a sudden stops rotating and something decisive is happening. So there are stylizations that came into the film, but not just spontaneously, as in this case. There was some sort of a mood in some other scenes which hinted at standstill and hinted at moments of almost a complete strange void, and yet a void centered around a pivot. We shot some of the scenes in Peru on Rio Urubamba, very close actually to Machu Picchu, but there is a story behind it. One thing was Mark Jaworski, the real murderer, had been in Pakistan and had become a Muslim there and returned from there strangely changed and became scary, and probably that was a moment where he started to become psychotic and paranoid and whatever. And it was a discussion with the production, should we go to northern Pakistan, which I knew from a mountain climbing expedition in the Karakoram mountains on Rio Braldo, on Braldo River, which is the most ferocious rivers coming out of the glaciers of the Karakoram and ending up in the Indus. And we said, no, we shouldn't do it because it would be silly to move to a very volatile area where American film crew and American film stars would be a high-profile target. It would be silly to do that. So what is the next most ferocious river that I knew? And I said immediately, Peru, Rio Urubamba. I shot there when I did Aguirre, The Wrath of God, and other films. And so I was quite familiar with it. And Peru is very close to me. I do not feel that this is an exotic country. I have the feeling the jungle is something very familiar to me. I understand the jungle, I function well. And so we decided we should go to Peru and shoot near Machu Picchu.
We were here 38 years ago, down there, and on this mountain. You see this, and to the right there's in the trees some sort of a structure. 450 people stayed in there. 1971, and now we are 2009.
As young as ever.
There's also a location which I knew in the westernmost part of China, in Kashgar. The city of Kashgar used to be the crossroads, somewhere an intersection of the ancient Silk Road, and the population living there, Uyghurs, are basically all Muslims, and they look like Silk Road 1,000 years ago. And I decided we should go there, and of course obtaining a shooting permit would take 2 years, and we probably wouldn't have gotten it because it's such a volatile area. And only 6-7 weeks after we filmed there, the Uyghur uprising took place, and in the city of Urumqi and Kashgar, I think 700-800 people lost their lives. So it's a very tragic and very volatile area of China, and we decided to go there, pretend to be tourists with little cameras only. And I remember that Michael Shannon said, well, Werner, if you come along, that's fine, yes, we'll be courageous and we'll do it guerrilla style, but the producer, Eric Bassett, should be along as well. If we get arrested, the three of us should end up in jail. And they said, fine, yeah, let's do it. And we were quite conspicuous, and we should be quite conspicuous with Michael Shannon. He had a wooden breastplate, and a wooden arm was fixed on this with a camera looking at him. And if you walk through a crowd like this, everybody who passes you will turn around and stare at you. So that was the effect I wanted to see. I think filmmakers have a natural right to shoot anyway. We don't do harm to anyone. We just went there for an hour or two and filmed, and it was wonderful footage, and I like it. And we got away guerrilla film style.
Speed.
Camera.
Rolling.
28, take 2.
In position. In position. Concentrate. Concentrate.
Casting a film like this, of course, is essential. And I immediately thought, who could play this part without depicting clinical insanity? That's what I didn't want. So you have to have a high caliber actor, and I think there's only a handful who would really understand that part. And I came across Michael Shannon, immediately trusted in him, although I had seen not more than maybe 60 seconds of one film in which he appeared. And I approached him and I said, I would like to load this burden on your shoulders. Are you prepared to do that? And he immediately said yes. It is essential that the other characters, in a way, fit in texture. You see, and I immediately knew it should be Willem Dafoe, it should be Chloe Sevigny as his girlfriend, and it should be Udo Kier, for example, as a theater director who stages the Oresteia. So knowing it's not enough just to cast very good actors. You have to understand that they really fit together and they complement each other and they form an element of friction sometimes. And of course then some wonderful finds like Grace Zabriskie, an actress I came across through David Lynch's films. She's a very Lynchian sort of a figure, and I loved her in David's films. So I asked her, could you please join in, and this somehow it's my tribute to David Lynch that you are in the film, and she participated. So, and she fits extremely well in this whole texture. And that's essential that young directors often do not understand. They cast one fine actor and an actor who had a great success in this or that film, and then all of a sudden the texture doesn't function. And that's essential. Music has always played a very important part in my film and in my films. And here there was a situation where there was something almost operatic out there, and all at the same time extremely scary and strange and unheard of, unseen of things. And I asked Ernst Reisiger to score the music, and of course he's also playing the cello himself. He's an ingenious avant-garde cello player. And I had done a couple of films with him before, most notably The White Diamond and The Wild Blue Yonder, but he did some of the music for Rescue Dawn.
A child is brought to this house to avenge, to lift.
And I had the feeling, the strangeness of what he was doing, and sometimes it's almost incompatible, seems to be incompatible, and the music creates a very strange ambience in things, very, very hard to verbalize it, but I'm really glad that he did the music for the film. And it fits extremely well, in my opinion, and I want to continue with Ernst Reisiger in other movies, but it has to be the right project. So many reasons for doing this film, and of course the absolute fascination of the story. There was something deeply intriguing, and when I looked at the materials, and Herb Golder had actually a stack as thick as this, the difficulties was to push all this huge amount of documentation to the side and start to invent the case, to reinvent. We should not be an accountant of facts. We should be poets, or we should start to invent a story based on something real. And because of that, I always said the real state of human insanity, the clinical state of insanity, is not that fascinating. We do something on a different level. And it should be a genre film, but on a different level, something that we have not seen in that form yet. And I think we succeeded. I think there was a very, very clear focus. Also, when you look at the focus of storytelling, I've never been in my life as precise in storytelling as I've been in this film. So in many ways it was something which was not just dormant, it was deep inside of me and needed to come out. It was not a forgotten project, it was always somehow virulent, and it was always present in my mind. And so I'm very, very glad that I made it.